Welcome back to the Alpha Insider Show. I'm Aaron, and today we're diving into a game changer. You know, people are always talking about hustling, grinding, and pushing their limits. But what if I told you there's power in being lazy? No, I'm not saying to sit on the couch all day, although wouldn't that be nice? But Dr. Bach has a whole new take on this with his latest book, To Overachieve Everything by Being Lazy, available now on Amazon. Dr. Bach shows us that taking a step back and slowing down is sometimes the fastest way to level up. Sound crazy? It's not. We'll explore how mastering the art of efficiency, simplicity, and focus can unlock your highest potential. I can't wait to dig into this one. Albert, Isabel, you have the floor.
All right, so you know how we're all about working smarter, not harder? Well, today's deep dive is going to really shake things up. We're looking at this book, Lazy, To Overachieve Everything. Being lazy.
Yeah, the title alone, right?
It definitely makes you stop and think. And what makes it even more interesting is the author.
Okay, tell me.
Dr. Beck. So get this. He's a dentist, an entrepreneur, ND. He's somehow written over 170 books.
Wow, 170. Okay, that's...
I know, right? Talk about productivity.
That's wild. He must have some serious secrets.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to unpack today. He's all about this idea of, like, lazy overachieving.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lazy overachieving. How does that even work?
Right. It sounds almost like a contradiction. But he jumps right into it in chapter 1 with this concept of being a realistic dreamer.
All right, break that down for me. A realistic dreamer.
So it's not about, like, minimizing your dreams or anything. It's more about finding that balance, right? You still have those big goals, those big dreams.
Okay.
But you're also really focused on those small wins, those little victories that keep you moving forward.
I like that. So instead of getting overwhelmed by, like, the huge scope of a big goal, you're breaking it down into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Exactly. And each of those small wins kind of builds on the last one, right? Like, it gives you that momentum, that energy to keep going. He actually talks about celebrating finishing a book by immediately starting the next one.
Whoa, he just jumps right into it.
Right. No rest for the wicked.
So instead of waiting for motivation to strike, he's creating it himself through these constant small wins. It's like he's always riding that wave of accomplishment.
Totally. And speaking of motivation, this ties into another strategy he talks about, hacking your hormones.
Okay, now hold on a second. Hacking hormones. That sounds a little intense.
I know, right? It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. But it's actually not as crazy as it sounds.
All right, I'm listening. What's the non-sci-fi version?
It's all about, like, becoming aware of the physical side of motivation. So he talks about how even something like daydreaming about a goal, right?
Yeah.
That can actually trigger a physical response in your body.
Interesting.
And he says that by, like, tapping into those feelings, you can almost, like, trick your system into being more motivated.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's about actually feeling those positive emotions in your body.
Yeah. He gives this example of, like, visualizing a future achievement and really feeling that excitement.
I can see that.
And then, like, when you're feeling stuck or unmotivated, you try to recapture that same feeling.
Interesting. It's like you're creating a physical anchor for those positive emotions that you can then access when you need them.
Exactly. And this idea of working with your natural energy rather than against it, it's a big part of his whole philosophy, which kind of leads us to his perspective on resilience.
Resilience. Okay, I'm curious to hear this because I feel like we hear a lot about, like, pushing through hardship, you know, like toughing it out and all that.
I know, right? But his take is, it's a little different.
All right, how so?
He's more about, like, working with the inevitable ups and downs, right?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to power through everything.
So it's less about being a superhero who never falters and more about being able to navigate those challenges when they arise.
Yeah. He even talks about, like, letting go of those labels like lazy or resilient if they're not helpful.
Huh, that's an interesting thought. So it's more about defining success on your own terms and focusing on what actually works for you.
Totally. And that's something I really appreciate about his approach. It's not about fitting into some, like, perfect mold of success. It's about figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, that resonates. Okay, so we've got realistic, dreaming, hacking hormones, rethinking resilience. What else does this lazy overachiever have up his sleeve?
Okay, so get ready for this one because it sounds a little out there, but he talks about reading the weather of life.
Reading the weather. Okay, now I'm really lost.
I know, it sounds a little strange.
Yeah.
But basically, he's talking about, like, anticipating challenges. So just like you check the weather forecast to see if you need an umbrella, he's saying we should be doing the same thing in our own lives and careers.
So, like, paying attention to trends, being aware of potential obstacles before they become big problems. Is that what he means?
Exactly. He says it's about being proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah.
So instead of getting caught in the rain, you're the one who brought the raincoat,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I like that. Being prepared, thinking ahead. Okay, I'm starting to see where he's going with this whole weather thing.
Right. It's about staying one step ahead.
Yeah.
And speaking of staying ahead,
Yeah.
he also emphasizes the importance of investing in yourself.
Investing in yourself, that's one of those things that everyone says, but what does it actually look like in practice?
Well, for Dr. Beck, it's not just about, like, financial investments, although that can be a part of it. But it's more about spending time on things that bring you joy, things that fuel your motivation and help you recharge.
So that daily walk in nature, that weekend getaway, that pottery class, those aren't indulgences, they're investments in my productivity.
Exactly. He's saying that by taking care of your well-being, you're actually setting yourself up for success.
Interesting. I can see how that ties back into the whole working smarter, not harder thing. Okay, so we're taking care of ourselves, we're reading the weather, we're hacking our hormones. What about those pesky negative thoughts? You know, the ones that pop up and try to derail us. How does Dr. Back deal with those?
Oh, he's got a really interesting take on that, too. He actually encourages you to analyze them early on, like before they have a chance to spiral out of control. He calls this being in your buffer zone.
Your buffer zone.
Yeah, so instead of trying to shut down those negative thoughts completely, you're kind of stepping back and examining them while you're still in a calm and rational state.
So it's about confronting those thoughts strategically rather than trying to ignore them or wish them away. That's a pretty different approach. I like it.
Me too. It's like he's saying, don't be afraid of those negative thoughts, just don't let them take over. It's all about taking control before they control you.
And he thinks that by doing this early on, while you're still in that buffer zone, you can actually reframe those negative thoughts and maybe even turn them into opportunities for growth.
Exactly. It's about, like, catching that snowball before it turns into an avalanche,
That's a great analogy. So it sounds like this whole lazy overachieving thing is really about being proactive and intentional with our energy and our mindset.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting? He dedicates a whole chapter to ego, which I think is so important, especially when we're talking about success and achievement.
Oh, the ego. Yeah, that's a tricky one. It can be such a powerful driving force, but it can also lead us down some pretty dark paths if we're not careful. What does Dr. Back have to say about navigating that?
Well, he doesn't shy away from the duality of it. He says that ego can be both a driving force for good and a major source of downfall.
That makes sense. Like, a healthy ego can give us the confidence to go after our goals, but an inflated ego can make us blind to our own shortcomings.
Exactly. And he encourages readers to really examine their motivations. Like, why are you pursuing something? Is it because it truly excites you? Or is it more about proving something to yourself or to others?
Those are some tough questions, but they're important ones to ask ourselves.
For sure. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate most about Dr. Back's perspective. He doesn't shy away from those tough questions, and he doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
Yeah, it's refreshing. So what's his advice for keeping our egos in check while still striving for success?
Well, he talks a lot about the importance of staying open to learning and growth, even when you're at the top of your game.
Humility, even in the face of success. I like that.
Right. And he sees arrogance as a form of stagnation. Like, if you think you already know everything, you're never going to learn or grow.
It's true. We should always be striving to learn and evolve no matter how much we achieve. So we're staying humble, we're learning, we're growing. What else does Dr. Beck have to say about this whole lazy overachieving thing?
Well, this next part might surprise you. He actually talks a lot about love.
Love, like romantic love. What does that have to do with productivity and success?
It's actually not just about romantic love. He talks about love as a form of giving, like giving your time, your energy, your resources to others.
Okay, so how does that tie into personal growth and success?
He believes that active giving, it can actually lead to profound personal growth.
Interesting. So it's less about what can I get from this relationship and more about what can I give.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that this applies to all kinds of love, not just romantic relationships, like showing gratitude to your family, your friends, your mentors, anyone who has had a positive impact on your life.
That makes sense. Okay, so we're giving love, we're staying humble, we're hacking our hormones. This is quite the recipe for success. What else does Dr. Back have to share?
Well, I think one more piece of advice we should touch on is his perspective on how to deal with difficult people. Because, let's be honest, we all encounter those challenging personalities from time to time.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm sure our listeners can relate to that too. So what's his secret? How do we deal with those difficult people?
Well, his approach is actually really interesting. He says that instead of getting defensive or trying to win an interaction, we should try to understand where the other person is coming from.
That's easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But he says that everyone has an agenda, right? And by understanding what that agenda is, you can often find ways to create mutually beneficial relationships.
So it's about finding common ground, even with people who might initially seem difficult. Interesting. So it's less about manipulation and more about honest, open communication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He believes that honesty and authenticity are the foundation for any strong relationship, whether it's personal or professional. And you know what I really appreciate about his whole approach?
What's that?
It's just so refreshing. It's not like he's giving us this rigid one-size-fits-all system.
Right.
It's more like he's giving us these principles, these ideas, and then encouraging us to find what works best for us.
Yeah, it's a choose-your-own-adventure guide to success, which I love. It's not about fitting into some perfect mold. It's about creating a version of success that feels authentic to you. And speaking of authenticity, I think it's interesting how he brings in this whole concept of love.
Oh, yeah. We kind of glossed over that earlier. It's not what you'd expect in a book about productivity.
Right. It's like, what does love have to do with getting things done? But his perspective is actually really insightful.
So remind me, how does he connect love to personal growth?
So he talks about how love, it's not just a feeling, it's an action, right? It's about giving your time, your energy, your support. And he believes that by giving to others, we actually grow and evolve as individuals.
Okay, I could see that. So it's like the more you give, the more you grow.
Exactly. And it's not just about grand gestures of love. It's those small, everyday acts of kindness and generosity that can make a real difference, like writing a thank you note to a mentor or offering to help a friend with a project. Those little things add up.
It's like that saying, you get what you give. But in this case, it's more like you grow what you give.
I like that. You grow what you give. And speaking of growth, that ties into another really important point he makes about dealing with difficult people, which, let's be honest, we all have to do from time to time.
Oh, yeah, those challenging personalities are everywhere.
Right. And it's so easy to get caught up in those dynamics, to become defensive or try to win the interaction. But Dr. Back, he encourages a completely different approach.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's his secret? How do we deal with those difficult people without losing our minds?
So he says that instead of trying to change the other person, which, let's be real, we can't control other people, we should focus on understanding them.
That's good advice.
Right. What's motivating their behavior? What are their underlying needs and fears? Once you understand where someone is coming from, it's much easier to find common ground.
It's like that quote, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. We never really know what someone else is going through.
Exactly. And Dr. Back, he really emphasizes the importance of approaching these situations with empathy and compassion.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not about letting people walk all over you. It's about setting healthy boundaries while still trying to understand where they're coming from.
Right. And he also stresses the importance of clear, honest communication. Don't be afraid to speak your truth, but do it in a way that's respectful and compassionate. And, when I think about all of these strategies together, from realistic dreaming to hacking your hormones to reading the weather, it all comes back to this idea of self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
Yeah, being aware of our own thoughts, our emotions, our energy levels, even our own egos. It's essential for both personal growth and success. And I think that's what makes Dr. Back's perspective so unique.
So it's not just about working harder or even smarter. It's about working in alignment with who we truly are. It really is. It's like he's giving us permission to define success on our own terms.
Exactly. And to find joy in the journey, right? Because it's not just about the destination. It's about who we become along the way.
That's so true. So if our listener is trying to embrace this whole lazy overachieving thing, what's one concrete step they can take today? Something small and achievable that aligns with this philosophy.
Ooh, that's a good question. What could they do today? I think it goes back to that idea of realistic dreaming. What's one small action our listener could take that feels aligned with their bigger goals and values?
I love that. Instead of getting overwhelmed by the big picture, we can focus on those small, consistent actions.
Right. It's about building momentum one step at a time. And lest Dr. Back reminds us, even those small wins can have a ripple effect, propelling us towards those larger aspirations.
It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly. So, dear listener, what will your first step be?
That's something to think about.
Yeah.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. I feel like we've really challenged some conventional ideas about productivity and success.
I agree. It's not about burning ourselves out. It's about finding a sustainable path that feels authentic and fulfilling.
Well said. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving for that unique and fulfilling version of success that feels true to you.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. Feeling inspired to start embracing the power of being lazy? We hope so. But if you want to dive deeper into this mind-blowing approach to achieving more by doing less, don't miss out on Dr. Bach's book, To Overachieve Everything by Being Lazy, available on Amazon, Kindle, and Apple Books in 51 countries. Grab your copy today and discover how shifting your mindset can transform your life. And here's some insider news. Dr. Bach is currently working on an exclusive alpha class, his own version of a masterclass, where he'll guide you step by step through this powerful method. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned for more updates. Thank you for joining us today on the Alpha Insider Show. We're on air every Monday and Thursday at 8 a.m. I am Aaron. Welcome to the Alpha.